video, I would like to try and to show you how to extract data from a journal article. I know when I first started looking at these, they seemed like they were in a foreign language. So it's good to just get an idea of what actually out of all that data is relevant to pull out for your literature review essay. So I'm going to just go to a separate file here called data extraction in my project diary. Okay, so this is where I'm going to decide. I've now got all of my reviews, and now I'm going to decide which ones are going to be good enough to take forward to actually write about. So in the included studies tab, that's everything. And this is where we kind of put everything through a filter to make sure they're definitely okay, and they'll make it to the final version of our review. So I would just put the date there, the reference number of the article itself, which I'm going to get from the included studies. So go right to the top. It's this one I'm going to be focusing on, and I would have given it a reference number, which is number 1. What I'll do is I'll get the title of it to copy over as well. Control and C to copy it over to my data extraction. Okay. Going across to some of the details and the title of the article there. I'll paste it in there. But back to the beginning again. Okay, so the search name, I'll have a look at that too. Just keeping everything consistent here. Search name 1, search name 1. Okay, so what do I want to know about this article? So I've got, does it mention autism and counselling or CBT? So those are the three main things that form my entire review. It's about counselling, it's about autism, and I'm comparing to CBT. So let's bring up the article. Cognitive behaviour therapy versus counselling intervention for anxiety in young people with high functioning autism. So that ticks all of those boxes. Let's see what else I need to check. In this column here, I've got my questions, my sub questions. So not only does it need to contain those things, it also needs to include one of my main points. So my question 1 is person-centered counselling enough for autistic people? What, if any, are their limitations? So I've just put that in brief there, limitations enough. If it's not enough, what adaptations are being used? So I've just put adaptations. And again, CBT compare. And then for my 4th question is there sufficient research? Okay, so I know it's got CBT compare. And I know this talks about adaptations because in the introduction, let's see. Okay. Here we go. In the design, within method design, I happen to know that they use a CBT intervention called the Multimodal Anxiety and Social Skills Intervention for Adolescents with ASD or MASI, which is an adaptation of CBT. It's not exactly CBT. Okay. So yes, that ticks 2 of my questions, CBT compare and adaptations. So that's good to go to the next part. Okay. Does the study report as an outcome any of those outcomes basically? So I've had a look through the article and it focuses on parent, teacher and self-reports of anxiety and social disability. So that does. So it ticks all of the boxes to make it through to the next round. So I will just put there, continue. There should be enough in this article to answer questions within my review and to pull up critical arguments for it. Okay, so Daisy. So I'll then take all the details from the article to fill all this part in, which a lot of which will already be in the included studies, just the author, the year, the name of the journal, just the standard stuff really. And then as for this article itself, the answers to the right can be answered. But I'm going to also now introduce you to something called CASP. CASP is the Critical Appreciation Skills Program. This is something that's been set up by a whole group of academics so that everyone uses the same way to analyse data and to check the quality of the data. So that we've not got lots of academics going their own separate ways and producing a load of research that can't be compared to each other. So CASP helps to do that, and it's been agreed by many, many academics. So what it does, it has 10 questions to help you make sense of the qualitative research. In our case, this is qualitative. CASP does this kind of questionnaire for all different types of research. If you were working on quantitative, it would have a different form for that. But for us, we're looking at qualitative research. So that's what this form here actually does. And these questions help you to establish the validity and the quality of the study, the results, and the usefulness of the results. Now, what I'm saying is you don't necessarily need to use this for every single article that you're going to look through. So say you're looking through 30, you don't necessarily have to sit down and do this form for every single one, but it would be useful for certainly the first few that you complete to help it guide you through what is actually relevant in the articles. Because there's going to be a lot there that you don't actually need to read. So this will help you focus in on what actually in academia is important to look at. So as I say, first few, definitely do this. If you were working on a different type of project where you were getting funding for a business, you would use this for every single one because it would make sure that the results were definitely the most beneficial for saying to a funding body, yes, this is the best research. But for the purpose of this essay, this is more to train your mind in on what you're looking for. Okay, so obviously you put the paper for appraisal and the reference number there. Okay. Was there a clear statement of the aims of the research? They're giving you hints here. Consider what was the goal of the research, why it was thought important, and its relevance. So on the article itself, okay, just have a look actually in the abstract. The use of cognitive therapy as a treatment for children and adolescents with ASD has been explored in a number of trials. While CBT appears superior to no treatment or treatments as usual, few studies have assessed CBT against a control group receiving an alternative therapy. Our randomized control trial compared the use of CBT against person-centered counseling for anxiety, people ASD ages 12 to 18. Outcome measures included parent, teacher, and self-reports of anxiety and social disability. Whilst each therapy produced improvements in participants, neither therapy was superior to the other to a significant degree of measure. This is consistent with the findings for adults. So that looks good to me. So it's definitely telling me what the aims of the research are and why it's important. So I would tick yes there. Okay. Pick up computer. Now let's put a little tick there. Okay, and if you wanted to, you could obviously put a comment there. That might help for later on, but for the purpose of this, I'm just going to tick that. Is a qualitative methodology appropriate? Hint: if the research seeks to interpret or illuminate the actions and/or subject experience of research participants, Is qualitative research the right methodology for addressing the research goal? We know qualitative tends to be better for this type of, in counselling, it tends to be better because we're not really talking about numbers, we're talking about people's experiences. So yeah, I would agree, qualitative is the way to go with that. And so yeah, I'm just going to ignore that question, but I think that is big enough. So I'm going to tick yes on that one. And is it worth continuing? Was the research design appropriate to address the aims of the research? Basically, have they justified their research design? Have they discussed how they decided which method to use? Now, let's have a look. Just going to scroll through this because I think they absolutely did. So first of all, up here, we've spoken about what type of CBT they're using. They've talked about how they're going to do baseline within 4 weeks and completion of treatment and 12 weeks after. They've got some good controls in place. Randomization was managed by a statistician unconnected with this study, so they're not going to be suffering from any kind of bias. And everything's been put through fidelity measures by blind independent assessors. What this is doing is taking away what they call allegiance effect, where someone can be a little bit biased towards certain types of therapy that they have a particular allegiance to. So you might see in CBT research, for example, that a lot of the researchers carrying out the studies are very pro CBT, and whether it's done consciously or unconsciously, that can lead them to be biased towards CBT. So these kinds of checks need to be in place to avoid the allegiance effect. Okay. Scrolling down. So you can see where I've highlighted, there's not an awful lot I actually end up taking out of it. The highlighted bits of a lot of what I did take out. Okay. So here we go. Results. 43 patients were then assessed with ADIR, ADIS and ADOS. Okay. So that's to make sure that they're meeting the autism diagnosis criteria. That these tests are making sure that they used their own types of therapy faithfully. So you might have, say, a person-centered counsellor that sways towards a different approach. So this PCT PRS is making sure that they are keeping it true to its form. So the CBT therapist, it was keeping CBT, and person-centered were being very person-centered to keep that accurate as well. Okay. Yeah, so clicking through that, I'm pretty happy, wrong one, sorry, that the research design appropriate to address the aims of the research, and they've just justified their research design. So I'm going to put a tick there. Yep, I'm happy with that. So it's definitely worth considering continuing with this article. It's of good enough quality to carry on. So was the recruitment strategy appropriate to the aims of the research? Consider if the researcher has explained how the participants were selected. Yeah, we've gone through a bit of that. They had to make sure that they were diagnosed with autism. They used the ADOS and other tests to make sure of that. They selected were the most appropriate to provide access to the types of knowledge sought by the study. Yeah, they've got the specialist type of CBT being used. They've got person-centered, and they've got people that know that are definitely working within those therapy types. And they've got, as I discussed, the assessors were doing it blind, so there's no allegiance effect getting in the way. And there were some discussions around recruitment, why some people chose not to take part. We just looked at that very briefly just now. So, yes. Was the data collected in a way that addressed the research issue? If the setting for the data collection was justified, if it is clear how data was collected, focus group, semi-structured interview. I know they were doing a randomized controlled trial. They've justified their methods chosen. Their indication of how interviews were conducted. Yep, they did that. If methods were modified during the study, I'm not sure they did that, but yeah, I'm happy that they did that. So I'm going to tick a yes there. Obviously, you don't have to tick all these things. You're just making sure that they've at least thought of some of the things that are in here. Has the relationship between researcher and participant been adequately considered? Have they considered the oh dear. Research critically examine their own role, potential bias and influence, formation of the research questions, data collection including sample of recruitment and choice of location, how the researcher responded to events during the study and whether they considered the implications of any change to the research design. Again, these are all things that you can look out for. So you could go into the article and just search some keywords. So let's search, and by bringing that search up, you just press Control and F. That brings that little box up there. I'm going to put in here bias, see if anything comes up. There is also evidence of diagnostic bias. We were fortunate to work with an experienced clinical team with awareness of ASD symptoms in girls. Yes, they're talking about the fact that girls are not diagnosed as much as boys because of the bias towards male autism. Bias, try that again. Okay, so to measure therapeutic alliance, both these measures rely on video assessment of the treatment sessions by blinded independent raters. These authors have stressed the importance of such raters as opposed to the client's self-ratings or ratings from treating clinicians to avoid possible bias. Therapists also were blind and did not know which sessions were to be used for assessment. Yeah, so that looks like they're covering that element. So that was quicker to just do a quick search, keyword search, brought that information up. So yeah, they've definitely had a look at that. What are the results? Have ethical issues been taken into consideration? Consider if there are sufficient details of how the research was explained to participants for reader to assess whether ethical standards were maintained. If the researcher has discussed issues raised by the study, issues around informed consent or confidentiality, approval has been sought from the ethics committee. So let's just do some keyword search in here then. So keyword search, let's just try ethic. It should bring everything up. Here we go. Ethical considerations. Favourable opinion was received from the National Research Ethics Committee. So yeah, it went to the Ethics Committee. All young people participating and their parents and teachers provided written consent after receiving full details. Participants were free to withdraw at any time without giving explanation. Participants did not pay for therapy, nor did they receive any payment for participation. So that's a big tick there. Yes. Okay. Was the data analysis sufficiently rigorous? I think from what we've read, I think we can definitely agree they've got some rigorous things in place to make sure of that. But let's do a keyword search with analysis and see what we can find. Analysis plan. Well, that looks promising. Okay, so what they're saying is they've used recognised measures for anxiety, the ADIS and the CASI-ANCS, and a secondary aim was to compare outcomes for social skills between these two interventions. Thus, SRS was included as a secondary measure. Okay. The dichotomous score was also generated for each participant, indicating whether or not they had met the diagnosis for separation anxiety, social anxiety. And the Fisher's exact test was used to test for between group differences for the PCT, PRS, and the TPOCSA, and attendance of session data. Distributions were non-normal and non-parametric statistics were used for between participant comparisons. Effect sizes were calculated for all analysis. Sorry, for non-parametric. Yeah, I mean, again, it can feel a bit like a foreign language, but they're certainly using some terms there that are industry standard within the analysis. And obviously, if you don't understand any of these terms, just stick them in Google so you can get, let's say, an English translation of what they actually mean. I mean, that's what I've done previously, so I do know these are industry standard terms. So I think for the purpose of this, that all looks good. So that's another yes. It definitely looks sufficiently rigorous to me. Okay. Is there a clear statement of findings? Hint. Consider whether, if the findings are explicit, if there is adequate discussion of the evidence both for and against the researcher's arguments, if the researcher has discussed the credibility of their findings, if the findings are discussed in relation to the original research questions. So let's have a look in results. I find actually the best place to look for this is discussion. It kind of translates all of those results into plain English. So the answer to the original question is here. In summary, no significant differences were found between the Massey CBT intervention and the counselling intervention on any of the measures taken, with the sole exception of separation anxiety. Yeah, so even the result is being treated cautiously. They've got some interesting notes here. An interesting difference between the two interventions concerns attendance for individual sessions, with attendance at counselling sessions being significantly higher. Unfortunately, previous trials and error have rarely reported attendance, making comparison of this aspect of our study with others difficult. Although there has been little investigation of the optimum number of sessions or hours for anxiety treatment, meta-analysis of psychotherapy intervention for anxiety in children did compare effect sizes for intervention Offering different numbers of treatment hours. Okay, so what are they saying? So in our study, suggesting that both treatments did reach optimal amounts. However, counselling may have been a more appealing treatment, and as a result, the significantly higher dosage received in this treatment arm may obscure differences between counselling and CBT. Nevertheless, it has to be remembered, while CBT has been shown to be superior to passive treatments such as waitlist. Passive means not receiving any therapy at all. In large numbers of studies, it has not, as discussed in our introduction, shown superiority against active treatments. So that's comparing it to another treatment like person-centered counselling. Okay, so let's just remind ourselves of what the question was. The findings are explicit. They've gone. There's discussion about both before and against the researchers' arguments. The credibility of the findings, yep. And is it discussed in relation to the original research question? Yes. Okay, and finally, let's see number 10. How valuable is the research? Consider if the research discusses the contribution the study makes to existing knowledge or understanding. Yep, I just said just what I read just now. They definitely were contributing to research that's already out there and adding to it, because most of the research before now had been against wait lists. Well, this one's not been. If they identify new areas where research is necessary, I think they're basically saying that there's not enough of this type of research, so the research needs to be there in expanding other areas of research, and also looking at the optimum number of sessions that people have in the research. That needs looking at as well, we read before. So I think there's enough going on in there to give that a tick as well. No boxes there, but let's just go with that. So this research article definitely passes our CASP check. And hopefully, I know I'm waffling a little bit on this, but I'm kind of thinking as I go, and hopefully part of my thought process will help the kind of things to think about and the kind of things to look for. It certainly isn't a rehearsed video. So I'm just going to show you the rest of this spreadsheet. So a lot of what we've looked at will now need to fit into this spreadsheet. So I've put the objectives there. The population is diagnosed ASD. And I've found the age and the gender split. Now, it was actually quite fiddly finding that information in this article, which sometimes it might be. So sometimes you do have to do a little bit of digging. So I'll show you how I found that. I found it in one of the charts. So let's see. Here we go. So this is a breakdown of the participants, which is where I found the sex. Not all of the articles you find will actually split the sexes, but for my research, I wanted to know what the difference is between male and female, because in autism, there can be quite a big difference in the presentation type of an autistic female and an autistic male. So at the end, I was going to kind of, that was going to be something I maybe argued within the piece, that it was, if I'd found out that most of my articles were coming out as male, then I would maybe have made a comment, well, this may not be accurate for people that are female. So that's definitely something I wanted to collect, and something you should collect as standard anyway. So we've got here child gender in brackets male. So okay, so basically 59% were male. So then you can work out how many out of that were female. I also where are we? Here. Collected the age and the average age. Again, that is important, because if you're looking at surveys and you find that all of them are, well, maybe 90% are on university students, because a lot of the time trying to find participants for research can be hard, and a lot of the time it'll be university students that become participants for various research projects, but it kind of skews the results, because if you have the majority of the studies coming out as, say, 18-year-olds, this might not be very accurate for a 40-year-old married woman with 3 kids, just saying. Um, so these are interesting facts just to look out for, so should be put there. And I've just put here, I showed you the so the ethnicity recruitment sampling, must be in a mainstream school, must be diagnosed ASD, must have anxiety, and some exclusions there as well. But the type, this will be relevant to your study, so I've put here PC counselling, CBT or other, so that's the type of intervention they have received, and that's what I've put in there, PC and this adapted type of CBT. Okay, so what is being evaluated? To compare CBT for anxiety for young people with ASD to a consistently applied alternative therapy, person-centered counselling. Okay, and the model, so how did they report the data? Was it survey, focus group, interviews? It was a randomized controlled trial with 2 study arms. So I've just put a bit of detail there. And validation and recording, we discussed that before when we were looking at CASP, but I've just written there, assessment at baseline within 4 weeks of completion. So when you're looking at other studies, once you've got this fully populated from all of your surveys, this is the kind of thing you can compare very quickly, the studies with each other. Okay, the method. So again, that's the how the analysis was done, how it was reported on. I did all that there. And the different types of ways they collected that flowchart and text and tables. Then here towards the end is where you start collecting your quotes. So CBT, the mean number of individual sessions attended. For counselling, there was a significant difference. Again, that's what I was talking about with regard to how many sessions were attended, and they found a difference in that between CBT and person-centered. Any author statements put here. So although for this demonstration I've just put one thing in here, you put a full stop on there and add anything you find to do with this. I was tending to put an asterisk at every new point, and you could also, for everything you do here, color code the text. So to color code that text, I'm just going to take that highlight out there. Okay. Oh, here we go. I've done it already here. So I've just highlighted that in yellow and put the 2 because it's 2, my question number 2 with adaptations. So this is a statement about adaptations that when I come to write that question in my essay, I'll know, right, okay, there's one that's relevant to that particular question in it. It drills it right down. It's noteworthy that despite the purported challenges in establishing positive relate, oh, I can't read it. Right, let me just scroll up here. Excel's just being a bit silly. So 2 adaptations. It's noteworthy that despite the purported challenges in establishing positive relationships with children with ASD, scored obtained by our clinicians were similar to those in McLeod and Wise's study, thus emphasizing the importance of making therapies available to this client group. So when I come to write my essay, when I talk about adaptations of person-centered counselling, that might be a quote I use to say that it's important that we make it available to the autistic client group. And that's why adaptations will be important. Okay, and here there'll be far more information in there. You're going to find in each of the studies you do, there's going to be loads of points. You can see I've put a few here. I've just color coded that one for an example. But yeah, definitely color code it and put the number as you go, because when it comes to writing up your essay, it'll be far easier to spot the relevant parts to that part of the essay. Okay, so further research needed. For clients who do not wish to receive CBT or have not found it effective for their needs, further research may usefully investigate counselling as an alternative therapy. So what that's saying is, whereas CBT hasn't been compared that much to alternative therapies, it would be useful to do so because not everybody likes CBT. Okay. And here's some limitations. Again, limitations might be a key word, so just go into there and Control F to find limitations. There we go. It's got a whole heading all to itself. So strengths and limitations. It is possible that larger sample sizes would detect subtler differences and smaller effect size differences between CBT and other interventions. So that might be a quote that I would put in this one. So yeah, that's what I'll put there. And here it is where I would, yes, find quotes, but this is anything that stands out that I might mention as well. So I've put here, an adapted version of CBT was used in this trial. It does not mention an adapted version of PC. Therefore, this trial does not compare like for like. So this is me saying it's not really all that fair. So this is my voice coming into it. They've adapted CBT for this, so it's not actually accurate to say they have compared CBT to person-centered counselling, because it's not CBT as we know it. It's MASI, a different type of CBT, but the person-centered that they used was not adapted in any way. But I would like to mention that person-centered counselling still came out equal. So a comment I might make in my essay is, if adaptations were made to person-centered counselling, would it actually have come out more effective than CBT? So again, that's me putting my voice in to say, actually, this survey was a bit biased because CBT kind of had a helping hand, and that's how you get your voice in. So any other observations that I put here that I think, oh, I could use that in my essay, that might be an argument I might make. This is kind of where I might put that. Okay. So that's it for now. That is how to analyse the data in a journal article. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.